So without sounding like too much of a Nissan commercial and going back far enough to give context and tell the whole story, I would have to go back a couple of years ago when I first got involved with a Nissan series called the Sentra Cup. So that was my first experience in actually sanctioned racing, and it opened up a whole door, a whole other universe to me.
I think Darren called me. He said, "There's an opportunity for GT4 race series." I said, "What is that? I don't know anything about that." And he said, "Well, Nissan, has a Z car. They really want to get competitive." And I was like, "Well, we own Nissan stores, so this makes sense to do something like this." I think why did we want to get into it though was because most car dealerships don't care about cars.
First of all, the brands that we'd had prior to Nissan as the dealerships didn't have the lineage that Nissan has. Some of you might remember Paul Newman and some of the famous Nissan cars of yesteryears, the 510, the Z, not so much here, but in other countries. So having Nissan stores really creates an environment where you can get into racing with some meaning. Through my Sentra Cup time, I really became enamored with some of these racetracks. Like, they're just fascinating racetracks. I had no idea. There's a track in Quebec called Trois-Rivières. We raced through a passage that was built in 1600 something. I had no idea. So the history of car racing is actually very deep, and it also runs deep with Nissan.
And we race cars, we buy cars, we sell cars, we are cars, that's our thing. Like, we love cars. And so to have a competitive race car in a brand that we own and represent was it was a no-brainer. It makes total sense to do this.
When we discovered that Nissan was going to be supporting a Nissan Z car in a GT4 series, it got our attention from the get-go. And then what happened was there was an opportunity, like an opening that was created. And we found ourselves in a position in discussions with one of the top teams, Flying Lizard, somewhere on my shirt here, maybe on the back. And just the sun aligned with Jupiter, and we found ourselves in a position with some necessary components.
No, I think that's a big differentiator, and it's so weird. It's so weird to think about that car dealerships don't like cars. For the most part, they like making money, and we are cars. We like cars. You think hundreds of years ago when car dealerships, or 100 years ago when car dealerships came about, like, they did it for the love of cars, and hey, this is new technology. This is cool. I want to be involved, and then it just evolves to it's just another business to make money. This is a way to do it. Well, it's the way we make money for sure, but we do it with a passion towards the actual vehicle, right?
The dollars, the car, and man, what a great series. Some of these tracks are just fantastic. The season finishes off at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, one of the most fabled tracks around. Sonoma Raceway, Circuit of the Americas, an F1 track, Road America, Sonoma, the track in San Francisco is just, I'd never been to many of these tracks before. So as much as I elected not to be driving in this series, it's still the next best thing to being in the car is being on the race team and being there and heavily involved. So just when opportunities present themselves, I think it behooves us to act on them, and what a great opportunity. So Damir and I, we met many years ago. We are both members at a private track in Osoyoos, and he and our wives met on a party bus. So we forged a bit of a relationship then. Same common interests, obviously, and have been friends ever since, and much closer now, having been through a tumultuous season.
I kind of look at, like, Sonoma, expectations were here. Like, preseason was incredible, and then we came to Sonoma, and then we got reset to whatever, below zero.
With any new team, and we are a new team, and the car itself is only in its second year, there were a number of teething pains. The underdog without the massive amount of experience and track time. We had several setbacks. We had multiple incidents. One of them took a car out for us. Several of them had us with very poor qualifying times, which had us having to work through the field. And as Damir will explain, working through the field is a very hazardous thing to do. There's lots of people with the same intention, and it can end poorly. And it's, of course, it's racing, it's dangerous, but it's also very expensive. So I'll let Damir get into more of that detail because he felt it physically. But it was challenging. But the good news is it wasn't that challenging because we're back at it again.
So yeah, everything from spot buying a car on a moment's notice because we're already here, the whole team's here, we got to go racing. So
And that was right after, right?
that was on site. That was first session of the first test day. We lost the one car in the wall, and that was the only car we started the season with.
Let me say something about the car itself, often referred to as a her. Izzy has been, we have two cars of course, but Izzy was the first one's nickname. Just a lovely piece of machinery and pays great homage to the original car of 1970, which by the way, I'm busy restoring one. There's an expert in Salt Lake City, JDM Legends is his name. He's had a little cable show for a while and he's known for restoring these cars. And yeah, I mean, the car itself it's got such history. Like there are people, before we even started the series, there was a buzz on the internet about the Z car being in this series.
And Nissan had the second car there. And so, yeah, I had all of like 20 minutes to get over being pissed about the fact that we're down a car. And then it was about, okay, well, do we want to race this weekend or not? Right. We wanted to race this weekend. Yeah. So then, yeah, it was a trial by fire. It was a baptism of fire, whatever you want to call it. Sonoma was one of the tougher weeks of my life, other than obviously like real problems like family health and that kind of stuff. But in terms of professional and hobby, that's about as tough as a week gets, I think. Yeah.
So the GT4 race car is actually, unlike say a GT3 race car, it is actually a road-going car. It's born, it's got a chassis. It's very much like the production car, save a lot of safety items, of course. The engine is a factory engine. The transmission is not, it's a sequential gearbox, but the rear end, the placement of the suspension, everything is very factory. My favorite racing series if someone was to ask, would be the Trans Am series of the 60s, because those Trans Am cars were literally showroom stock cars that were warmed up and placed on a track.
Yeah, when I asked Darren years ago, why did you create Applewood? Like, why did you start Applewood? He said, very simply to make things better, right? Better for customers in the car industry, better for staff, but also better for communities. He's very, giving back to the communities that we do business in, and that now is across Applewood. People, all our staff, all our team members are very much giving towards the communities that we do business in. So you marry that with, great organizations like Autism, like Cops for Cancer, anything like that, RAPs that we do. It's a big part of what we do and why we do our business, like to make things better in our communities, right? If our communities are strong and they're thriving, then we will thrive with them.
So actually the only track of the entire season of our 7 race weekends, the only track that I had driven previously that I knew where I was going was Sonoma. And then 30 minutes in, we got reset to 0 for a different reason. So we ended up being behind the 8 ball at every single track. The only one I knew, we had a different thing happen. But yeah, so it was a whole set of challenges the whole way through. It's actually it's a huge part of why I'm looking forward to getting back out there next year, because landing, knowing where the racetrack is, knowing where the pit in and out are, knowing where pre-grid is, and then not to mention knowing the racetracks and where to pass on them, where to not get passed on them. I have some real excitement about not, being confused every time I arrive at a new racetrack.
One of the more fascinating stories that's at play here is really the kind of what I like to call a bit of an underdog story. A lot of people have seen the movie Ford against Ferrari, where you've got significant underdog. Nissan, in a great respect, is is that underdog. They've been largely, the Z car hasn't raced in a competitive series for many, many years. One of the reasons why we were excited to move forward is because of a great deal of support from Nissan. I've always been fascinated with Japanese engineering, having been to Japan a number of times and just seeing how they function. It's even more incredible to watch how they are at the racetrack. There's several engineers at each race. Even before the series started, we met with many of them. They walk around carrying laptops, and the minute the car does anything, even when it doesn't do anything wrong, they are analyzing everything. So it's very confidence inspiring to have that sort of support from our manufacturer. It's unusual in the GT4 series actually for that to happen. And back to the underdog thing, it's, you got some major brands. Porsche is probably the most notable one. Decades and decades of GT racing, billions of dollars invested. Nissan, with a much smaller footprint, is out there racing with these guys, and in fact, having to have some of their horsepower curtailed through balance of power that we'll explain later to make the car less effective against some of these major giants. So certainly our friends at Nissan have played a major role in not just the success of this past year and future years, but also just the reason for us to get involved.
I think for us, when Darren brought this opportunity to me, is like, I don't want to do this unless we're going to be dominant, and really we want to win. So we want to be associated with winning and be number one. Why do we do this? I think first of all, it spurs on a passion with our team and with the community for people to know that we're not just about selling cars or servicing cars. We're all things cars. We are cars, right? So that it shows that we're in. Now, if there was real competitive race series in Canada that had the same brands, we would be in that, right? But there's not. This is a big race series with the brands that we represent in Nissan, so it's a great partnership for us. I see it growing. If we decide to do something, if you do it for a year, you're not going to get much. This was our freshman year. It was our beginning, right? So now we learned a lot this year. Learned about the marketing of this event and about how it works, all the costs involved and all the logistics involved. So we're only going to get better and be more dialed in and get better results on the track and off the track with this partnership.
The whole thing is just so competitive, and we use that word a lot in everyday life. When you get into one of these situations, when you get into this, everybody cares. Yeah. Everybody's spending way too much money. All the manufacturers want to win. Every single person behind the wheel, it's either their life's work to be a professional driver, or they're hyper competitive, they've made it in whatever other pursuit and they're able to put themselves in that seat, right? So you've just all of a sudden you're in the, like I said, you're in the tall grass with the big dogs, right? Yes. So everybody cares. Everyone's got a great race engineer. Everyone's got great mechanics. Everybody is trying to get that next little tenth of a second. And so I think anything that happens, whether it's self-inflicted, whether something isn't what you expected it to be when you get to that weekend on that track, whatever, any little thing, you don't lose one spot, right? If one weekend we were on the wrong springs, it's a team sport, right? So one part of our team made a slightly incorrect assumption, and it was a short weekend, and then it rained on one session, and that session was useless for data. And so we ended up qualifying on the wrong springs. We're a second a lap off. So instead of being third, we were 20th, 21st actually. So what went wrong? Why are you 21st? We were on springs that were 200 pounds too stiff.
This GT4 series really represents that very well. It is a production car that is caged and altered for safety and some small performance enhancements for cooling and braking, but there are Nissan parts all over this car, which makes it kind of cool.
Well, grateful that I made it as far as I did in racing over the past 5-6 years, having zero impacts of any kind. I literally never scratched a bumper on anyone or anything, never been in a tire wall, never kind of did any of that kind of stuff. We were at Road America, America's national park of speed. It's the fastest track on the calendar, the highest risk track on the calendar, the track itself, but then in particular, a corner called the Kink are notorious. They're actually one of the most dangerous and most exciting and fastest parts.
So the car is so much like a factory car that there has been multiple cases where if we need parts that we can run to the Nissan dealership and access parts and have us back on the track the same afternoon.
The other aspect of a high commitment corner or a high commitment track in general is a lot of it is done by feel, and then generally speaking there isn't much margin for error. So you never want to go off track. You always want to stay on the pavement, start out wide, hit the apex, go back out, kind of slow in, fast out. Higher commitment tracks, higher commitment corners, you go in at whatever speed you decided to go in based on judgment generally, rather than the mechanics of I saw the 100-foot board, so I'm going to get on the brakes and then I'm going to turn in at the 50 board or whatever. So it's more of a feel corner. It's high risk, high reward, and if something goes wrong, if you made a mistake, if the car has something go wrong with it, there's nowhere to go. Yeah. And so in this case, what's waiting for you on the exit of the Kink are concrete walls on either side, with about maybe 2 or 3 feet of grass separating the pavement, which you're supposed to use all of to try and maximize your speed, from those concrete walls. So in testing at Road America, had a really great test day. We had both cars running, and we were trying some setup changes, and we tried a set of springs that ultimately did end up making the car go faster. We did end up running them in the race, ended up having great success in that race. But I ended up having my first ever impact with the wall, ended up being a big one. So first one was a big one. I'm okay. I had a bruised tailbone that's fully recovered, but it was scary. I don't really want to make a habit of doing that. It was expensive. I don't want to make a habit of doing that. And unfortunately, it was I turned the wheel to enter the corner. I didn't carry too much speed. I didn't do kind of any of the usual things. I turned the wheel a little bit early. So I turned the wheel at 200-ish k an hour. It was about a 15-foot gap from where I did turn in to where I should have turned in, and that ended up what's called pinching me in the corner. So because I went in too early, I came out at the wrong angle, and waiting for me was a concrete wall. So big impact, learned a lot. Was a interesting set of sort of emotions, thoughts. Obviously you gotta think of family and why am I doing this, and do I need to be out here taking these risks? And so on the one hand, you don't want to do that again. On the other hand, it was fine. These cars are so incredibly safe. The series is run so well. I mean, there was a doctor in a medical car there within 30 seconds. Track was immediately red flagged. I was totally fine. But it was sort of a bunch of emotions, and then got back on the horse literally the next day, because we had 2 cars and then we were down to 1. So I got in the other car the next day, and then we went fast.
Working through the field essentially means that for one reason or other, you are back in racing with cars that are slower than you. So you've got to work your way through the field to get back into your rightful spot. And a lot of these tracks are very tight. Passing is risky at best.
The nice thing is, we were giving up 2/10, 3/10 a lap, and we got second place. Right. So it was our best finish of the season. So I think the season and racing, sort of in a nutshell, went from the lowest low to the highest high within a couple days. The exact same place with spare car. You know, I'm 39 years old. Like, I think learning real things about yourself at this age is a treat. It's really cool, and so I think having something that's like such a forcing function for it, that's obviously enjoyable to do. It gives me all sorts of, you know, emotions, pride, all that stuff. But yeah, I reflect, and I did. End of season, like I took a long time packing up at Indy. I sort of like got back to the hotel and just did a little bit.
Yeah, we've supported Autism for probably about 8 years. And previously it was we gave them money. And then about 5 years ago I said, well, we're car dealerships. Why wouldn't we give them a car to raffle off? They could make a lot more money than just the money we could give. So it started off by giving them, you know, a Nissan here and then a Kia, and then each year when the GT4 came up and it was time to decide what vehicle we were going to do for Autism to raffle off, you know, I thought, well, what better way to get more people involved in charity? Like we weren't getting a lot of 20 to 30-year-olds buying raffle tickets for a Nissan Kicks or a Kia Sportage. So this year, the Z, they had a lot of people, a very diverse amount of customers buying raffle tickets. You know, so you had car enthusiasts plus the people that always support Autism. You know, so it ended up them raising the most money they've ever raised, I think close to $120,000 or more, which is incredible, right? So it was great. It was great to have this symbiosis and something cool we're doing in the race series and now give away a really cool car.
In my head, I've been fantasizing about racing cars since I was like 3. But less than 12 months ago today was my first time ever in a real race car, in like a fast car. Which was, you know, a half day at Sonoma in a rented Porsche Cup car.
It has, I can't emphasize enough the personality of that car, just because of what it means to so many people. When the car was introduced in 1970, it was, like many Japanese cars, a bit of a bargain. So there was access, more access. So there's a lot of people that have a great adoration for that car. And we have a few of them. And to be honest, when this opportunity presented itself and the investment of the several $100,000 for the car itself, I actually was excited just to own the car. So, you know, a seasoned race car, if it's reasonably well kept and hasn't hit the wall at any speed, it carries some value, so there is some investment thing, but it's worth saying that the car itself and the sort of personality of the Z car is one of the more endearing parts of the campaign.
So I think to look back at Indy heading into a gala with 7 podiums under our belts, which, by the way, you know, our season, 7 race weekends, 2 races per weekend. There was the summer break after the first 3 races. After the summer break, we got 7 podiums. And I don't think we actually really caught up on that. I didn't realize it happening at the time, but like our second half of a season was a championship winning second half of a season.
Yeah.
We just had the worst luck in the world and the most learning opportunities anyone's ever had in 3 race weekends in the first half of the season.
Yes.
So I reflected on that a lot. That was sort of there's still, you know, everything's gonna get better, hopefully, and we're gonna learn some new lessons next year, I'm sure. But really, my big takeaway and kind of personally, I think that every single component of the team had to massively level up, myself included. You know, Nissan, the team, everything had to work better after that summer break, and we did, right? So like that to me, I love that rate of change. It's kind of like where I get my kicks out of this thing.
Mm-hmm.